And the next voice you hear after this little bit of music will be that of SOTU. Thank you, Josh. Here we go.
All right, Adrian. So that's it's an interesting dynamic, and so it gives us that opportunity to speak about the fact that so many of you are going through certain, what shall we say, very deep and very trauma-filled, energetic dynamics that are not unfamiliar to you, and the reason that they're not unfamiliar to you is because most of you have been carrying around this life lesson that is coming up now your whole lives. Some of you are old farts and you're still dealing with your stuff, and others of you youngsters are dealing with these emotional situations, and so many of you don't have any foundation to work from. And so we wish to remind you that the energies that you are feeling are being exacerbated by others. That's not to say that what you are feeling is illegitimate. In fact, it is the most legitimate part of the whole dynamic, because the energy of growth is urging you all to be more. You are being urged to move into your adulthood as a species, and it's time. It's like you can't avoid growth, Those of you that are adults, remember how you tried to avoid your adulthood? How well did it work? You laugh, Adrian.
I know it. Yes.
Well, and if you look at the dynamics of your government and all of that, that's what's going on with that as well. You are being asked to be more. You are being asked to move into a more adult way of being and doing. We talk about a dynamic of fairness. The dynamic of fairness really has to do with the safety net that you really need to create in your world, because you have grown beyond the paradigm of survival of the fittest. You have grown beyond the paradigm of competition and comparison. You have move beyond the dynamic of free market capitalism. As long as things were more primitive, as long as things were more basic, consider from World War II on up, and the industrialization of the United States and the world, it has been a situation where that industrialization, that industrial world, has existed for a long time, and all of the forms that you have used in order to move yourself through that dynamic of that stage of growth with its inherent unfairness. You have been working on fairness in many different ways, on race, in religion, in human nature, in human respect, in human dignity, and it is that dynamic of fairness that each of you are feeling and each of you are seeing in the reflection of your world. There are, yes, those in your world that are radically anti-American in that sort of way, but it's also, if you can understand why, you can understand that you have been living for the past 50 years within a paradigm that is inherently unfair, that has been more and more being manipulated, and more being propagandized by people that are greedy and people that, we're not going to point any fingers, but as we said a little earlier, 0.1% of you owns 50% of all the wealth. So, you can't tell us that there's not enough. It's just a matter of redistribution of that dynamic. And now we realize from a free market capitalism point of view, that is blasphemy, right? But the answer is not necessarily the other side of the coin, which is the old style communism and the old styles of socialism that has existed in your world. In fact, the socialistic part of the dynamic needs to be a situation where your basic needs are covered. Why? Because there's not enough jobs anymore. Then there's not going to be enough jobs in that sort of way, and more robotics and automatic systems are going to come into play for all of those mundane, redundant tasks that exist in your world. And so earthly humanity is going to have to find something else to have its interest rather than just working and producing. And maybe the dynamic of working and producing is moving more from the industrial working with your hands, although that is still absolutely needed, to a more technological understanding of where true freedom exists, because there is enough for all. And so if you have the best of both worlds in that sort of way, as we were saying on yesterday's show, yesterday's live stream, that you're all clever enough. You can figure this out. Mm-hmm. You know how to do this. All you have to do is stop and consider the dynamic of fairness. Consider real solutions. Realize that the minute that you think that there is not enough, you're reacting to the manipulation.
Well, I was just going to ask, you're saying that the feelings that we're having are being amplified and manipulated. How to best avoid that, knowing that it's
right
going
for
on?
Right now, you just have to stay out of it.
Stay out of the fight.
Stay out of the fight, right. And stay as objective as you can. Which
we can recognize we're in the fight as soon as we're triggered.
Oh, yeah.